Coming up on 5 Minute News. Election workers face midterm threats of extremist violence. State legislatures will see change due to exodus of incumbents. And climate news is worse than feared in new UN report. It's Monday, November 7. I'm Anthony Davis. Election workers in Arizona's most fiercely contested county faced more than 100 violent threats and intimidating communications in the run-up to tomorrow's midterms, most of them based on election conspiracy theories promoted by former President Donald Trump and his allies. The harassment in Maricopa County included menacing emails and social media posts, threats to circulate personal information online, and photographing employees arriving at work, according to nearly 1,600 pages of documents obtained by the Reuters news agency through a public records request for security records and correspondence related to threats and harassments against election workers. Between July 11 and August 22, the county election office documented at least 140 threats and other hostile communications, the records show. "You will all be executed," said one, "wire around their limbs and tied and dragged by a car," wrote another. The documents revealed the consequences of election conspiracy theories as voters nominated candidates in August to compete in the midterms. Many of the threats in Maricopa County, which helped propel President Joe Biden to victory over Trump in 2020, cited debunked claims around fake ballots, rigged voting machines, and corrupt election officials. More than 1/4 of state lawmakers whose seats are up for election across the US are guaranteed to be gone from office next year, a statistic certain to grow when the votes are counted from the November general election. A combination of retirements, term limits, redistricting changes, and primary defeats, especially among Republicans facing conservative challengers, already has driven turnover in state capitals to its highest rate in more than a decade. More incumbents will lose tomorrow as voters decide nearly 6,300 state legislative races in 46 states. The changing composition of state legislatures could have significant implications for public policy. Though the federal government often garners more attention, state legislatures hold the power to ban or allow abortion, set rules for future elections, raise or reduce various taxes, and determine what gets taught in public schools, among other things. This election is the first since districts were redrawn to account for population shifts noted by the 2020 census. Post-redistricting elections often see an uptick in retirements and defeats as incumbents opt against running in new areas or get matched up against each other. While the rate of Democratic primary losses declined slightly from 2012, the loss rate for Republican incumbents rose from 4.7% a year ago to 6.2% this year. Many of those GOP lawmakers lost to challengers aligned with former President Donald Trump and portray themselves as more extremist on such issues as election integrity, transgender policies, and school instruction. A summer U.S. Supreme Court decision overturning the national right to abortion and leaving such decisions to states added a twist to election year politics and provided a new campaign angle for Democrats who support a woman's right to choose. Earth's warming weather and rising seas are getting worse and doing so faster than before, the World Meteorological Organization warned on Sunday in a somber note as world leaders started gathering for international climate negotiations. The latest state of the global climate report is a chronicle of climate chaos, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said. We must answer the planet's distress signal with action, ambitious, credible climate action. In its annual State of the Climate report, the United Nations Weather Agency said that sea level rise in the past decade was double what it was in the 1990s, and since January 2020 has jumped at a higher rate than that. Since the decade began, seas are rising at 0.2 inches a year compared with 0.08 inches in the 1990s. The last 8 years have been the warmest on record, the WMO said in a report that didn't break new ground, but was a collection of recent weather trends, data and impacts in one central place. The data on sea level and average temperatures are nothing compared to how climate change has hit people in extreme weather. The report highlights the summer's incredible flood in Pakistan, a crippling 4-year drought in East Africa that has left more than 18 million hungry, and record heat waves broiling people in Europe and China. What climate scientists have warned about for decades is upon us and will continue to worsen without action, said University of Georgia meteorology professor Marshall Shepard. 2 things must go away: climate delayism and speaking about climate change impacts in the future tense. It's here, he said. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.